Welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast. We are here, once again, chained to our chairs and microphones to tell you a story. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we're here, like I said, to tell you a story. We're going to tell you a story. Please let us go. We need sleep. All right. Should I do a little recap before we jump into the story elements for this week?
Yes, please.
All right. This is a sequel to The Gods Are Here. Right? In our previous story, there were many gods. They had statues. You could give and take the essence of them to increase certain attributes in yourself. There was an 11th unknown god who was sort of the one who had seeded fear and sort of wickedness. And that last story had kind of ended with a big conflict where our heroes had tried to stop him while discovering who he was. We were finally able to stop him, kind of, and then this is the sequel to that. So they were able to stop him, kind of, but they took a lot of his essence out of the world. And so the world it's been going on now for, let's say, 5 or 10 years. I don't remember, did I say 5 or 10 or was it 30?
I have 11.
11 years sounds right. So it's been about 11 years since he's been quote unquote defeated, really not defeated, just kind of slowed down. And he is kind of back and he's been given more power. He basically took a bunch of his essence from the world to himself. And he also, through the blinding knife, was able to release a bunch of the other gods' essences back. So we're kind of in what's looked at as like a golden age of humanity. Lots of technology, not a lot of war, but something just isn't quite right with the world. There should be more. Something's missing. Some people speculate that the evil that was the 11th's kind of hallmark, since it was taken out of a lot of humanity, that humanity needs evil in order to like have good. Some people argue that, some people don't. Some people say that with evil being gone, that the competitive nature of man is gone. Really, there is still evil. It's just gone farther underground. So Reed's government type was essentially an oligarchy ruling class, where all the fabrics of society, kind of all information and all decision making kind of goes upwards, and it's a lot of slow moving red tape bureaucracy. It's going to take a long time to get anything done because everyone has to be informed and there's just a lot of talking. Does that seem right, Reed?
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, the economic system is just, centrally controlled. The banking, all that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, looking back, wage and price controls, for example. So what happens is there's less incentive. You don't want to renovate a building that people are paying rent in because you can't get any more money for it. So there's a disincentive for excellence, so to speak. You kind of goods and services are still produced, but then there is still a desire, both on the one hand of wanting to produce excellence and also wanting to, receive the fruit of your industry and effort, right? So there's like that's the black market, remember, and one of the commodities that was used for transfer is like these psych enhancements that helped people, and it was connected in some ways to the statues, the gods. And then also there's the gem enhancements from the fighting style, I believe. Does that ring a bell? I don't remember if I'm going back to the original story.
You are going back to the original story, yeah. So
yeah.
My point is that there is all of those things, but a lot of those things have changed.
Right.
Because of this new kind of golden age. So maybe it's kind of, when we look at it, it's not so much a golden age as it is a fresh coat of paint on a really worn out fence.
Yeah, but it's not too oppressive, and it's really not uncomfortable enough to, foment insurrection, so to speak. So people kind of are comfortable, and there tends to be complacency as long as things keep going along okay.
Yeah, but we're not going to write a story about things about no conflict.
Right.
So obviously there is a level to it that it is uncomfortable enough.
Right.
And then Seth had prophecy, which, if I can remember this, when the 3 fall, take notice. 2 will falter, a 4th will fall, not the 2, an 11th will rise unexpected. Once the 4 falls, the 12 will do away with the old. Was that the prophecy?
Yeah, pretty close.
Okay. So we can say that this is kind of now that humanity is entering this golden age, I imagine like new heights of philosophy and also new heights of learning are just kind of increasing or seeming to increase. Maybe this is kind of like this kind of led to what we'd consider like a populist movement. It's like now the working man can learn how to read. So things like prophecies and stuff like that have been kind of surfacing and becoming more and more and more known and circulated, and people don't know what to think of it. Some people say, oh, there's 12 major cities. That's not talking about the gods. It's 12 major cities that are going to rise. And so people are trying to, make new cities. I don't know. That's kind of the thing I was thinking about. People have lots of different ways of understanding it. But what story elements did you guys have for this week?
I have wise old woman.
I have hero's sidekick.
I have villain. I'd love to hear the hero's sidekick, because since we already kind of know who the villain is. Or wise old woman.
Well, I'll start with the hero's sidekick, because I think it kind of plays into what you were just talking about. So with the rise of, all the speculation and extra learning or kind of visibility on things that, maybe a more scholar class had in their pockets, but wasn't as widely propagated. The hero's sidekick, his name is Sebastian, and he is of that scholar class, but I would take it, I don't know that we've pinned down who the direct hero is, but he somehow gets shanghaied or added to whatever the hero's party to do whatever it is that needs to be done. But so he's studied all these prophecies and all this stuff and everything that it could mean. And so he's, kind of a valuable member when it comes to, reading older languages, knowing all the information about certain things. But his kind of hitch is that no one can really pin him down on what he actually thinks something might mean.
Okay.
And so he's always kind of got, oh, well, this camp thinks this and that camp thinks this. And these are the things that support them. And that's what, this is where they're getting it from. And that's where the interpretation for this way. And that's why this isn't right, because this has been disproven here and there. But this is, well, this could be maybe right because this, that, and the other thing, but never. So I kind of imagine that, like they need a bit of information, and he might have a lot of information, but not giving it in a way that is definitively pinned down.
No one quite knows what he believes.
Yeah.
I like it. And I like the idea of needing to deal with old languages and stuff. I think that's really cool. There's actually that actually kind of leads into my thing a little bit. Reed, can I go next?
Yeah, sure.
For villain. So I'm throwing you guys for a loop. The villain is a coalition of 4 of the gods. The 4 most prominent: war, commerce, civilization, and agriculture. The 11th god, while...
When you say civilization, like what kind of flesh that out for me a little?
Okay, he's the god of civilization. So you pray to him and receive his blessings when you're planning roads, building cities, learning how to manufacture cement.
Engineering.
Yeah,
engineering and civics kind of stuff.
And then, agriculture, obviously being the god of the harvest, but also the god of all the knowledge of the harvest, right? Since we understand that the god's essence builds up a person's psyche, it's not just like you get more of the god of war's power and you become better at war. It's like you become more aggressive as well. So I'm going to flip the script on the whole story and say that the 11th god, who was considered the evil one, who was considered the god of doubt, who was considered the god of fear, he was in fact considered the god of doubt and fear because he chose to doubt if their selfish systems that they wanted to build a race of slaves for themselves was right, because he feared that their pursuant goal of subjugating the whole universe was right. So flipping the script, he is in fact the god of reason, the god of logic, the god of critical thinking. So what has happened is the colleges have all but been erased, because as the gods have returned, because a lot of their power was returned to them in the last book, if you guys remember, a lot of their power was returned to them, and so religion is now the name of the game, right? So religion is how you receive all information, because the gods are so evident. They show up so much. So the how do I say this? There's the primary gods that are the villains who are doing this, who just fit right in and are totally willing to manipulate people in this government system, Reed,
Right.
because what they're trying to do is they're trying to garner enough slaves, essentially, people who are willing to go to bed for them, that they can then convince or subjugate the other gods to steal their essence and to kind of continue on their plan, right? And the 11th, he has come back in some ways, just like they have, but he has sort of a college, or a forum, a place of philosophy, a place of research, and it's considered like bad form to know how to write anything except for like the holy scripts, right? Which are the languages, the translations that twist the prophecies and twist the histories into the specific bent of these four betrayers, right? The other gods who kind of are on the sides are a little bit more wild, right? Like the healing god, she can't be subjugated. In some ways, she's the most powerful because so many people believe in her and worship her, and she gets so much resource that she's kind of like, she's welcome in any camp because she's so vital to humanity, And then like the sea god, he's just like a crazy, he's just like a crazy wild animal. But these four kind of hold the structure of civilization together, and therefore civilization is sort of pointed towards them. So that is that's the villain, and what they're trying to do is gather enough followers to begin the process of going out and hunting down these other gods, or hunting down just non-believers and then bringing them back and having their essence stripped from them and put back into the gods so that they can sort of gain more power. Because my thought process is that they went to sleep X number of years. So let's say they went to sleep 10,000 years ago, right? They went half asleep 10,000 years ago, established themselves as deities, and then went fully asleep, right? And then the 11th came and then, quote unquote, broke everything. Basically, he made it possible for the slaves to doubt and to think critically about the gods, and then he disseminated his essence throughout the world so that everyone could do that. And now this is kind of the end of their the maturation period. Maybe it was supposed to go on for another couple thousand years. There's supposed to be, a couple more millions of people, so they're kind of having to move their plans forward a little bit, but that's the villain. So it's like these four gods, and they're back enough now that the statues can kind of move a little bit.
Right.
But the actual gods can appear and sometimes do sort of minor miracles, but they're already turning on like the secret police, bringing in people who don't agree or don't believe in them, because now they have all the secret knowledge, so they can like control all the technology that exists, all the ships that are on the moon and that exist around to make it rain and do all these things that sort of further this picture of them. And the 11th is in a castle scholarly college outside of civilization, sort of trying to teach people to think critically and consider a different path and like use like debate tactics and argumentative reason to, because people are kind of falling over and just being won over by emotionalism. And like, I see this crazy thing, therefore that means he's all powerful. That means I should do whatever he says. And he's like, well, no, you should call into question and you should sort of be aware of what's going around you every day. And, instead of allowing people to just kind of fall into this thought process.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry if it changes everything. I realize it's going to mean that the prophecy is going to have to, we're going to have to figure out what that means.
I'm feeling like my wise old woman kind of fits into that a little bit. And I didn't anticipate the exact turn that you're taking, but should I throw this in now?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. Laura is her name, and wise old woman, and emphasis on the word old.
Laura Ingalls Wilder?
Yeah, Laura Ingalls Wilder. No, Laura was like years ago, she was able to receive kind of a gem boosted give, so to speak, from the statue of health and wellness, and so she has been like around a while. Okay, so that's just like that's kind of a subtext, but her main association has been, I suppose, under the god of civilization. She's been I don't know if there'd be a separate statue regarding administrations and civil institutions. I think it might be under the civilization.
Yeah,
but
that sounds like it would be.
But back in the pre breaking of the 11th god, she was very much involved in the what I call the black market. Her main function has served under in administrations, government records, banking, and administration, and keeping everything smooth so that the flow of information it allows this all to work, right? And so that the price controls and the wage controls and stuff can be enforced. And she was very much in the tech side of that process. Very much, she was one of the rocket scientists, so to speak, in the government system. But she also noticed how stultifying it was, and was very interested as this black market business was developing. And because she had the expertise from the tech side, she could codify the transfer of the digital files necessary for some of these psych enhancements that were used as currency in the more black market side of the economy. And she's like super hacker. She knows the government systems. She knows how to get around it. She knows how to keep her networks secure, which is practically unheard of, that there would be secure movement of information. But she's also a good friend of Landon. Landon was one introduced in the previous story, the gods are here, and he was a reoccurring character, and he was a super vintner, a distiller under the god Bacchus. And he especially, he comes from a clan that specialized in the growing of the especially blue fruit, and his interest was distilling to make this kind of potion, the hyper, what did I call it? He made frequent use of this especially blue hyper focus fruit potion, so that she developed the ability, kind of mentat, I think I'm calling on the Dune story, and I think in one of Heinlein's, I think might have been Revolt in 2100. I don't remember.
That's correct.
But
the super specialist.
Yeah. The synthesis, where you have specialists and you have generalists, but then you have the synthesist is someone that can function in the big picture world of the generalist, but with the hyper attention to detail of the specialist. And so she's sort of in that category. And so she has the tech ability to run this alternative electronic currency in digital psych enhancements, to not only provide them, but also to provide people with the means of exchange such that they can operate in black outside the system market activity. Anyway, so Laura, I kind of like her. She's really a cool lady, and she's got that mentat thing kind of going on.
Something I was thinking about, which is really interesting about her, and then also thinking about Sebastian,
right?
Is what if the gods kind of understood? Okay, so what if they are just they have, we could say, incredibly complex DNA.
Yes.
So what if from the 10 of them, they were able to create, how do I say this? It's their children.
Oh, okay.
Right? But because of the complex genetics that exist, everyone is not a clone, but they're essentially the same kind of being, right?
Yeah.
The gods just have tech and more time to have learned how to split their essence and all of these things, right?
Yep.
And you see that with Laura and with Sebastian. You see that with Laura in that she can take all of these, she's taken all these drugs and she's lived all this time and she's received all this blessing, and she can start to sort of kind of rise to the level of one of these gods in like thought process, thought speed, the ability to hold all this information and organize it. where the gods can do it because they've been doing it for, tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, whatever, millions of years, because that's just their evolved form. And they made this mistake, and this is one of the things that the 11th god is holding on to, is that they thought that they built in all of the fail-safes into humanity so that they could just basically turn people off. Like, they can just kind of go up to someone and be like, say a specific word combination, and it's just like built into your genetic code that you just accept whatever they say.
Yes.
And the 11th, he inserted the ability for growth and a workaround.
Question authority.
Which is what they didn't want. They wanted subservient systems who were as powerful as them, so that should any of them be injured ever, they could just go to one of their slaves and just take over his body and become have a new body that's exactly comparable to their own, right? But what happened is the 11th sort of inserted this thought process of, like, let's grow past that. Let's think around that corner. Let's find a way to take every thought captive. Let's separate out the harmful thoughts from the good, basically teaching them to hack themselves so that they can not be sort of taken up with every sort of whim that goes. Seth, you haven't talked in a minute. Have I ruined some big plan of yours?
No, not particularly. I'm just listening.
Okay. That's a thing I was thinking about.
Okay.
So we know who the hero's sidekick is, and I think it'd be cool if the hero's sidekick studied at this college. That's why he has all this knowledge and information, but he's not super forthcoming to, like, unless you had an idea, Seth, he's not super forthcoming to, like, say why he thinks the way he thinks, or why or where he got all this information from.
No, I don't think it's a matter of where. I just don't think that my idea for it was more or less a concept of having a lot of knowledge and information, pro and counter to itself, but not the applicable application of which one is right necessarily.
Okay, that makes
sense.
Yeah.
So it knows a lot of the information, a lot of the arguments, and all of the stuff, but doesn't, almost like a having knowledge for knowledge's sake.
Right.
But not forthcoming on what he is reasonably thought is true for himself.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's sort of, he would play a devil's advocate in an argument. If people's presenting kind of like okay, this is the course of action we ought to take, he would bring up, well, certain experts would say, and rather than actually arguing against, he would bring up what the argument might be against that without actually, like, claiming, well, it's not necessarily what I think, but this is what these people who have studied that question might say, and then kind of plays devil's advocate in his academic role. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Because again, we didn't really have the hero pinned down. I would almost imagine that our hero would come back from the last one. Or there'd be something else they have to do, all these different things they'd have to go find and search out and, get right, especially now with, like, a lot of the overall original thought process changed. You could have someone like Haggai, who was in the last one and fought vehemently against the 11th god. And now, not necessarily that he's right or wrong, but like having to go back through, and you've got this Sebastian character. It's like, okay, well, I need to know what's really behind this, that, or the other thing. And kind of like the devil's advocate thing, kind of going, well, there are those that, would hold that this is the meaning behind that, and this is where this thought process would come from, and the people that don't like it would say this, and this is what they've written about it and what they've said, and then kind of like getting on his nerves, right?
Yeah.
So throughout the story, I think it's what Haggai,
yeah,
kind of our anti-hero from the last one, has to kind of like finally get to a point of being upset and like push him into, but what do you think? What do we need right now? What is, we need to go here, and why is that? What's, not what everybody else thinks, but yeah.
Yeah. I had this kind of picture that Haggai would, in this kind of new fake golden age, would be sort of, at literally everyone's surprise, including his, be tapped to be the ruler of this new kind of unified nation that all live in that used to be all these villages and towns in the mountains. They all kind of unified, and they want him to be the leader. And it's kind of like this weird, like happily ever after story that doesn't seem to make sense. And Haggai himself is kind of pissed off. It like doesn't make sense to him. So he himself is kind of pissed off with this like turn of events that's happened to him, as he's kind of unceremoniously put in charge of a bunch of people who just like a little bit ago wanted to dead, and then my thought is that he kind of how does it say, he under responsibility, he wanes. No, he
Abdicate.
suffers. He kind of suffers under responsibility. Like none of it's right. Something's wrong with this, and he kind of finds new passion as people begin disappearing from this kind of his outermost villages. And so he kind of takes up this role of like vigilante, almost like I'm gonna go. And so he puts his fat counselor guy who wants power not on the throne, but like lets him sit in the steward seat, and then he just kind of goes to do the thing that he thinks back that he liked doing before, which was just kind of traveling around and being a nobody and not really having anyone whatever. And as he goes to explore, as he starts to kind of uncover this plot just from absolute his neck of the woods, and then maybe something in that he meets up with Sebastian, whether or not Sebastian's from that college or not. I kind of like the idea of the college kind of being like a monastery that's really difficult to get to, like far up in the mountains, so that people can't just burn it down or shut it down. But he's kind of looking into these kidnappings that have been taking place, maybe save Sebastian from being kidnapped, and then that's kind of like their thing together. And Sebastian ends up being all of the knowledge, and Haggai ends up being all of the conviction, and then he, through his kind of incessant goading and stuff like that, he doesn't need to break Sebastian out of his shell of opinion, but maybe, I don't know, do you think like at some point Sebastian needs to be not like he is, or is that an okay person just to be like forever?
My original thought was that at some point he has to break out of it.
I'm picturing like a kind of a at a hideaway, kind of a super secret location. Some of these people that have recognized the subplot behind the people pulling the strings, so to speak, and trying to reassert this kind of authoritarian regime. And you've got Sebastian, and you've got some people like I think of the engineer that developed the slider in the past story,
right,
that
yep.
Cody Truman. I'm thinking of Landon will show up with the wine, because to get the tongues flowing here. And of course, Laura is going to show up because she knows what she's got her fingertips on all of the movement of all the information, and who, they're not nearly as the cabal is not nearly as secure as they would wish to be.
So you think that Laura is a good
Oh yeah. She has been a counter force to freedom, to the stultifying effect of the old system back in the day. And then when the whole kerfuffle around the 11th god went down 11 years ago, which I think is kind of cool. She saw it for what it was and begins to see this new cabal taking over.
Right. So we're saying that Haggai turns into the hero then? Is that I think that's kind of a fair and good thing.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because he would have some notoriety for one thing. As much as he likes to keep his anonymity, he is kind of a rock star. Well, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. What you mean is he plays music for money.
No,
Travels
okay.
on the road.
Great. So what is I'm trying to figure out what our problem is, right? So the four main bad guys, they're just going to keep sort of, harvesting people until the cows come home.
So the 12th will rise and do away with the old, restore order. Is this restoring order under the regime of the four gods that want to assert control, or is this the 12th rising up in hero-like fashion to thwart the more self-focused, like Goa'uld from Star from Stargate, right? The gods that would use their power for their own selfish ends. Do you know what I'm saying? I think a lot hinges around the 12th will rise in the prophecy to restore order and do away with the old. That's language that could take a couple of different turns. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of my thought process was that when I said that the gods made the people just like them, right? So we're basically clones. The people in the story are basically clones. They're children, so they're not clones, but they're like direct genetic material. So given the right circumstances, anyone could take on the full power and be as powerful as the gods were, which literally just means be able to control all of their technology, right?
Right.
So that's kind of where I was thinking of going with the 12th will arise, is it's going to be a person.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
that,
yeah.
That will basically rise up, and then I lost my paper that has the... wait, no, here it is. So 3 will fall, take notice. 2 will falter. A 4th will fall, not the 2 that falter. The unknown, 11 unknown, unexpected. A 4th will fall. 12th will do away with the old. So we can I think it'd be a good idea just to decide how the end's going to happen even before we talk about the end.
I think it's a good prophetic twist to have. Anyone that would be familiar with it would pre-associate that there'd be some 12th god based on their understanding of the other gods that's supposed to come. But for the twist of it being one of them, I think that's a good twist to have towards the end. Now, who it is.
Yeah, I have this idea that maybe they kind of figure, like, humanity as a whole thinks it's a 12th god, but the people who are together kind of fairly early on discover, they mention Laura and they mention Haggai and they mention, who was the other person? I don't remember. These 2 people who have taken on vast quantities of change and their bodies have just been able to deal with it totally fine. And then maybe there's a scientist there who's just kind of going through it, and they kind of know, the inner circle kind of knows early on that someone could technically take all of this, and maybe they just kind of assume that it's going to be Laura, or they just kind of assume that it's going to be Haggai because they've already shown a propensity to take on all this power already, but maybe it's Sebastian who at the end finally decides that he is going to sort of stick up for himself, or he is going to not just rehash what other people believe, but maybe try believing something himself.
Cool.
And I think it'd be a good idea if we decided what that was going to be, because then we could spend the next episode getting to that place, because I kind of have this picture of, Haggai and Laura maybe fighting over who is going to do it, because maybe there's an element of kind of like how Rand, here's a Wheel of Time reference. Rand, the entire way through the Wheel of Time said, see, it says right here, he'll die. When he kills when he fights the Dark One, he'll die. And so there's this assumption that whoever it is that takes this mantle is going to die.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's the professor, quote, I'm making air quotes. There's the professor at the college where they're meeting who talks to them and seems to have really great insight, but he doesn't ever sort of reveal that that's who he is.
Yeah. He's sidekick material. Yeah, he continually stepping back.
Well, he's wise old man material.
Yeah.
Right. He can't, because if he were to say, I'm the 11th and I'm giving you, all of a sudden, all of the hardwire in their brain that says worship would all turn on, and they would his college would be turned into a church right away.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I have this kind of picture of 2 different, maybe it's Laura and Haggai really are kind of fighting it at the end. Who is it that's going to take this? Who is, it's well, I deserve to die. It's Laura maybe views her years as a curse now because it's been so many years, and she doesn't age, and she never feels, she never gets sick, but she now wants to get sick, because getting sick means that now she feels like a piece of porcelain that will just never die, and everyone that she loves will stay, she's not hungering for death, but she's weary of life. And Haggai is feeling the weight of responsibilities and always having been the guy who stepped up and put himself in the place, and whatever.
When you were talking, I thought about Bilbo Baggins. He feels what did he kind of stretched, kind of thin and drawn, like too little butter scraped over too much bread. I always like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then maybe it comes to a head, and maybe somehow Sebastian takes it over, or I don't know. I don't know exactly how it'll be, but I like that as an idea, and I think if we can kind of get to where the ending is next week, we can sort of get to that ending. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I
cool.
have this. I don't know. I have this need. I feel this need to say where the ending is.
Right. So what if one of us draws sad ending? It could be. It could work still. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Well.
Okay.
That's then we'll do it.
Yeah.
Duty says we'll make it work.
Okay.
So part of what I'm thinking is that the power, quote unquote, that the gods have is satellites, ships, atmospheric systems that exist on the planet, and the defeating of the gods really is the turning off of the system by which they can project their consciousness out of their comatose states.
Yes.
Right? It basically turns off all their machines. And if we can just turn off all their machines, then they can't talk to us anymore. Yeah, they can technically kind of influence us still, but all of the essence stored in the statues, which are essentially like sarcophaguses, will just stay there unless we want to bring them back, right? But what it looks like is a great defeat of the gods in some way,
Yeah.
Maybe it's something like channel all the power through you. Maybe it's something like you need to like take all of the essence unto you. I don't know. Let's just think about that for next week. What do you guys say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If someone could please get the keys, I've been chained to this chair for a week.
Okay.
I'm just continuing the joke, Reed. If you want to know more about us, if you like these episodes, if you have any cool ideas, you can email us at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or send us a message on Twitter or at us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We are happy to hear you, and we are happy to respond to anything you have to say. And we're also happy to say that we will see you guys next week with the wrap of the story. Thanks, everybody. Bye.